I didn't build that gate to stop a car. I built it because one specific person in my neighborhood refused to understand the difference between public space and my property. And the crazy part is, before all of this, I wasn't even the kind of guy who liked conflict. I keep to myself. I do my work. I wave politely when I see neighbors, that's it. No drama. No HOA meetings. No nonsense. But sometimes you don't get to choose the conflict. Sometimes it just drives straight through your front gate. Literally. My name's Daniel Reyes. I'm a structural engineer, been doing this for about 19 years. Mostly commercial work, secure facilities, load-bearing systems, things that are designed to hold up under pressure. Hospitals, data centers, places where failure isn't an option. So when I say I understand how things break and how to stop them from breaking, I mean that professionally. I live in this neighborhood called Westbrook Hills, small HOA, about 50 homes, nothing too fancy. My place is actually one of the older ones, a single-story ranch from the late 70s. Brick, low roof, practical layout. Nothing flashy, but it's solid, and it's mine. Now 3 houses down from me is where the contrast begins. That's where Vanessa Clark lives. And Vanessa is the kind of person who doesn't just live in a house, she performs in it. Her place is massive. I'm talking faux European mansion, columns out front, circular driveway. This over-the-top stone fountain that runs all day like it's trying to impress someone who isn't even there. Everything about it screams status. And Vanessa? She leans into that. Luxury SUV, designer outfits. Even just walking to her mailbox feels like a photo shoot. And every month, like clockwork, she hosts some kind of event. Garden brunches, wine tastings, charity lunches, networking dinners. Always something. And always the same problem. Too many guests. Not enough parking. Now most people, when they run out of parking, they figure it out. They tell guests to park down the street, maybe arrange carpooling, maybe, just maybe, limit the guest list. Vanessa? No. Vanessa looked at my driveway and decided that was the solution. Now my house sits on a corner lot, which means my driveway is a little wider than most. Not huge, but enough space for a few cars if you wanted to stack them. And because I value privacy, I installed a cedar gate at the entrance. Simple, clean, about $1,200. Not meant to stop a vehicle, just meant to say, hey, this is private. That's it. A boundary. Apparently, that was too subtle. The first time it happened was in April. Saturday morning, I'm inside working, coffee, laptop, normal day, and I hear this loud cracking sound outside. Not like a small snap, more like something giving way under force. I step outside, and I just stop. Because there, right in front of me, is Vanessa's SUV. Halfway through my gate, the entire cedar frame is shattered. Hinges ripped out of the posts, wood splintered across the driveway like debris from a storm. And she's just sitting there, engine still running, like she pulled in exactly where she intended to be. No panic, no confusion, just parked. I walk over, trying to process what I'm looking at, and I say, calm, but very direct, Vanessa, what are you doing? And she looks at me, completely unfazed, and goes, your gate was blocking access. Blocking access? To my driveway. For a second, I actually thought she was joking. Like, this had to be sarcasm, right? It wasn't. I told her she just destroyed my property. I pointed at the gate, what was left of it, and she just shrugs. Not apologetic, not defensive, just dismissive. The HOA will deal with it, she says. You shouldn't block shared space. Shared space. That's when I realized we weren't even having the same conversation. Because in her mind, this wasn't my property. This was overflow parking that I hadn't opened up yet. Within 20 minutes, 6 cars were parked in my driveway. 6. People walking in heels across my concrete, like it was part of the event layout. Nobody asking. Nobody questioning it. And Vanessa? She just went back to hosting like nothing happened. I replaced the gate that week. Same design, same materials, another $1,200. It annoyed me, sure, but I figured, okay. Misunderstanding. Maybe she just pushed too far once. People do that sometimes. They test boundaries. What matters is whether they respect them after. 2 weeks later, I got my answer. Saturday again. This time it's louder. Music. Laughter. You can hear it from inside the house. I already had a bad feeling, so I'm watching from the window. And right on cue, here she comes. Same SUV. Same angle. And I swear, she doesn't even hesitate. No slowing down. No second thought. She drives straight through my brand new gate. Again, the wood doesn't even put up a fight this time. It just snaps, collapses, gives way like it already knows how this ends. And I'm standing there watching it happen in real time, thinking, no way. There's no way someone does this twice. I walk out immediately, and this time I'm not calm anymore. What is wrong with you? I say, and she looks at me, almost annoyed, and goes, if your gate keeps breaking, maybe you should build it stronger. That was it. That was her logic. Not, I shouldn't hit it. Not, maybe I went too far. No, you should design around me. That's when it stopped being about parking. This wasn't convenience. This was entitlement. Pure, unfiltered, unchecked entitlement. Week 4, third event. Book club this time. Smaller crowd, quieter, but by then, I already knew the pattern. I didn't wait inside. I stood by the window watching, and sure enough, she lines up, accelerates, and for the third time, she drives through my gate, like it belongs to her. 3 gates, 6 weeks, $3,600 gone. And when I confronted her this time, she didn't even pretend anymore. She just said, if you don't want people using it, don't build something so fragile. Fragile. That word stayed with me. Because here's the thing. I don't build fragile structures. That's not what I do. I design systems that don't fail under pressure. And standing there, looking at what used to be my third gate, something finally clicked. Vanessa wasn't going to stop. Not because she couldn't, but because in her world, she didn't have to. And if she wasn't going to stop, then I needed to build something that would. Not a gate. A consequence. All right, let's pause the story right here for a second, because what Vanessa was doing, it might look like just crazy neighbor drama on the surface, but underneath that, this is actually a really clean case study of how HOA rules, property law, and human psychology collide. And if you've ever lived in an HOA, you probably already know, people get this stuff wrong all the time. According to standard procedure, an HOA does not give anyone the right to use, modify, or damage another homeowner's private property. That's the biggest misconception right there. HOAs regulate shared spaces, streets, sidewalks, maybe community amenities, but your driveway? That's part of your deeded lot. It's legally yours. Now, yeah, HOAs can enforce rules about appearance, what kind of fence you build, what color you paint it, how it looks from the street, but they cannot override property boundaries. They don't have that authority. So when Vanessa said, this is shared space, that wasn't just wrong, it was confidently wrong. And that's where things get dangerous. From a legal perspective, the moment someone intentionally drives into your gate, not once, not twice, but repeatedly, you're no longer dealing with an accident. You're dealing with willful property damage. That opens the door to civil liability immediately, and depending on how aggressive it gets, even criminal implications. But here's the part most people don't think about: insurance. Insurance companies operate on patterns and intent. 1 accident? Maybe they cover it. 2, they start asking questions. 3 or more. Now you've established behavior. And behavior tells them this isn't random, it's deliberate. And once something is considered intentional, coverage disappears. Just like that. Now let's talk about the psychology for a second, because honestly, that's what fascinated me the most about Vanessa. This is a psychological trap a lot of people fall into. It's called normalization of deviance. Basically, when someone breaks a rule and nothing bad happens, their brain starts rewriting reality. The rule doesn't feel real anymore. It feels optional. So the first time she drove through my gate and didn't face consequences, her brain logged that as, this works. Second time, reinforced. Third time, now it's a system. And once someone reaches that point, they're not questioning themselves anymore. They're questioning you. Why are you making it difficult? Why is your gate in the way? Why haven't you adapted to what they've decided is normal? That's how entitlement evolves. Not from arrogance alone, but from repetition without resistance. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Part of that pattern existed because I kept replacing the gate the same way. Same material. Same weakness. From her perspective, I wasn't enforcing a boundary. I was resetting an inconvenience. The lesson here is, boundaries don't mean anything if they don't hold. Not just emotionally, but physically, legally, and consistently. If someone can push through your limit 3 times in a row, then in their mind, that limit doesn't exist. And people like Vanessa, they don't stop at the line. They erase it. So by the time we get back into the story, understand this. What I was about to build wasn't just a gate. It was the first real boundary she was going to encounter. And unlike the previous ones, this one wasn't going to give way. So after that third gate, I stopped thinking like a homeowner. And I started thinking like an engineer again. Not emotional, not reactive, just methodical. Because once you strip away the frustration, the insults, the entitlement, all that noise, you're left with a very simple problem. A repeated force applied at the same location, under predictable conditions. And if something keeps failing under the same load, you don't argue with the load. You redesign the structure. So that's exactly what I did. I sat down that night, no TV, no distractions, and started sketching. Not a gate, in the traditional sense, but a controlled access barrier. Something that wouldn't just exist visually, but function mechanically. I mapped out the force distribution from a low-speed vehicle impact, around 10 to 15 miles per hour, based on what I had observed. Estimated weight of her SUV, angle of approach, point of contact, all of it. Because Vanessa? She was consistent. Same line, same speed, same assumption. And consistency makes people predictable. By Sunday afternoon, I had a full design. Steel frame, 2-inch square tubing, fully welded at every joint. Not bolted, not assembled in sections, one solid piece. Powder-coated black so it still looked clean, HOA-friendly, but underneath that finish, it was industrial. The total weight came in just under 500 pounds. Heavy enough to resist momentum, but more importantly, anchored properly. Because weight alone doesn't stop a vehicle. Anchoring does. So I designed reinforced concrete footings with steel core bollards, buried 4 feet into the ground. Not decorative posts, structural columns. The kind used in commercial settings to stop cars from entering restricted areas. Each hinge, rated for 1,200 pounds, mounted into steel plates embedded directly into the concrete. No weak points, no failure chain. If force hit that gate, it wouldn't transfer into collapse. It would transfer back. Total cost? Right around $9,000. Yeah, it was a lot for a driveway gate. But at that point, I wasn't paying for a gate. I was investing in a conclusion. And just to make sure everything was documented, I installed cameras. 2 of them. High resolution, wide angle, overlapping coverage. One facing the street, one capturing the full driveway. No blind spots. Because if there's one thing I've learned over the years, reality doesn't matter unless you can prove it. Installation took a few days. Clean work. Passed HOA aesthetic guidelines without an issue. Funny enough, they cared more about the color than the function. By the end of the week, everything was in place. And I remember standing there that evening, looking at it, quiet street, soft light, nothing happening, and thinking, this is it. Either she stops, or this ends. And right on schedule. Saturday came. Another event at Vanessa's house, this time some kind of charity luncheon. You could tell it was a bigger deal. Caterers, parked cars lining the street, people dressed like they were stepping into a lifestyle magazine. And me? I wasn't inside this time. I was ready. Around 2 p.m., I see her SUV at the far end of the street. Same vehicle, same driver. She slows down slightly, just enough to line up the approach, and for a split second, I wondered, is this the moment she realizes? Is this where it finally clicks? No. She hits the gas, and everything that happened next felt both instant and incredibly slow. The engine revs. The front end dips slightly as momentum builds. Tires roll up over the edge of the curb. The vehicle aligns perfectly with the center of the gate, exactly like the last 3 times. Except this time, the system was different. Impact. A deep, heavy sound. More like a body hitting a wall than wood breaking. Solid. Final. The gate didn't move. Not a bend. Not a shift. Not even a vibration I could see from where I stood. The bollards held. The hinges held. The entire structure absorbed the force and redistributed it into the ground, exactly as designed. Her SUV didn't have that option. The front bumper collapsed inward instantly. The hood crumpled, folding into itself like aluminum foil. I heard the sharp crack of internal components, radiator, mounts, and then a deeper, more violent snap. Engine block. Then, 2 explosive pops. Airbags deployed. For a second, everything went silent. Like the neighborhood itself needed a moment to process what just happened. Then a hiss, coolant leaking. A faint ticking sound from the engine trying to exist after something it wasn't designed to survive. I stood there, not moving, just observing. Because this wasn't chaos. This was the outcome. She sat inside the vehicle for a few seconds, hands frozen on the wheel, eyes wide, staring straight ahead. No injury, no panic, just shock. Real, genuine shock. Because for the first time, something didn't give way for her. She slowly opened the door, stepped out, and looked at the front of her SUV like it had betrayed her. And then she looked at me. "What did you do?" she asked. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "I'm sorry." "What did you do?" And I remember feeling nothing dramatic. No anger. No satisfaction. Just clarity. I looked at the gate, then back at her, and said, "I built it to code." That was it. That was the moment everything flipped. Because now reality wasn't negotiable anymore. Tow truck showed up about 30 minutes later. By then, a small crowd had gathered. Neighbors pretending not to stare while absolutely staring. Quiet conversations, side glances, you could feel the shift in perception happening in real time. Vanessa, who had always controlled the narrative, was now standing next to a totaled SUV in front of a gate that didn't even look damaged. And yeah, her car was done. Front-end destruction, internal damage, fluids leaking. No insurance adjuster in the world was going to call that minor. Meanwhile, I walked over to the gate, ran my hand across the surface. One scratch. That's it. A single line in the powder coating. The cameras captured everything. Clear angle, full sequence, approach, acceleration, impact, aftermath. No ambiguity. No missing context. By that evening, the tone had already changed. She started talking about lawsuits, saying the gate was unsafe, that I had created a hazard, that I knew she would drive into it. And I'll be honest, I almost laughed, because the logic required to drive into someone else's property and then blame them for not collapsing. It's impressive, but here's the thing. I wasn't playing her game anymore. Police came, reviewed the footage, walked the property line, took statements, and it was quick. Private property, no obstruction, no violation. On my side, nothing. On hers, a pattern. And then came the part she didn't expect. Insurance. Because once they saw the footage, and more importantly, the history, that was it. Claim denied. Intentional act. No coverage. No payout. Just a very expensive reality check. And suddenly, everything changed. The confidence, the certainty, the attitude, it all disappeared. Replaced by attorneys. She hired one within the week. I got the letter, formal, aggressive, trying to flip the narrative. But by then, I was ready. Because I didn't just have a story. I had evidence. I had documentation. And I had 3 destroyed gates before this one. So I filed a counterclaim. Full damages. All 3 previous gates. Installation costs for the new system. Additional security measures. And yeah, emotional distress. Because dealing with repeated violations of your property, that's not nothing. Total, just under $50,000. Her attorney reviewed the footage. All of it. And I'm guessing somewhere in that process, the conversation shifted. Because a few weeks later, the aggression disappeared. No more threats. No more accusations. Just silence. Followed by negotiation. And eventually, payment. Full amount. Within 60 days. No court. No trial. Just a very quiet settlement. After a very loud mistake. And the HOA didn't say a word. Funny how that works. A few months later, I noticed a for sale sign in front of Vanessa's house. 8 months after that, she was gone. And my driveway? Still exactly what it was meant to be. Private. Untouched. And finally, respected. So yeah, that's how a driveway turned into a case study on boundaries, physics, and human behavior. And if I'm being honest with you, it was never really about the gate. Not the wood ones, not even the steel one. The gate was just the visible part of something deeper. Because what Vanessa was really testing wasn't my property. It was my willingness to enforce it. And that's something a lot of people, especially in HOA neighborhoods, struggle with more than they admit. You move into these communities expecting structure, right? Rules, guidelines, some version of order. And most of the time, that works. People follow the system, respect each other's space, keep things predictable. But every once in a while, you run into someone who doesn't see rules as boundaries. They see them as obstacles. And obstacles, in their mind, are meant to be pushed through. Or in this case, driven through. The lesson here is, boundaries don't mean anything if they're optional. Not emotionally, not socially, not legally. If someone can violate your space once, twice, 3 times, and nothing really stops them, then in their world, that boundary never existed to begin with. It was just a suggestion. And people like that, they don't respond to conversations. They don't respond to politeness. They respond to outcomes. Now, I'm not saying every situation needs to escalate the way mine did. Don't get me wrong. Most conflicts should be handled early, clearly, and calmly. Documentation, communication, maybe HOA involvement if necessary. But there's a point, a very real point, where continuing to be reasonable just teaches the other person that they don't have to be. And that's where a lot of people get stuck. They keep explaining, keep negotiating, keep hoping the other person will suddenly understand. Meanwhile, the behavior continues. Because why wouldn't it? There's no consequence. From a legal perspective, what saved me wasn't just being right, it was being prepared. I knew my property lines. I stayed within code. I documented everything. I didn't escalate emotionally. I escalated structurally. And that matters. Because when things finally reached the point where lawyers got involved, I wasn't arguing opinions. I was presenting evidence. And evidence doesn't get tired, doesn't get flustered, doesn't contradict itself. It just sits there and tells the truth. Now, psychologically, this whole situation is something you see more often than people think. This is a psychological trap where repeated success in bad behavior creates a false sense of permission. Vanessa didn't wake up one day thinking, I'm going to destroy someone's property. She started with a small violation, got away with it, repeated it, and eventually built an entire belief system around it. I can do this. This is fine. This is normal. Until one day, reality corrected her. Hard. And that's the part nobody talks about enough. When entitlement finally meets resistance, it doesn't negotiate. It collapses. Fast. So if you take anything from this story, whether you own a house, rent an apartment, or just deal with difficult people in general, let it be this. Respect boundaries. And more importantly, protect your own. Not aggressively, not emotionally, but clearly, consistently, and when necessary, effectively. Because one day, you're going to run into someone who doesn't understand limits. And in that moment, you've got two choices. You either keep rebuilding the same weak gate over and over again, or you build something that makes the situation stop. For good. And trust me, it's a lot cheaper, financially and mentally, to solve the problem once than to keep repairing it forever. Anyway, I'm curious. What would you have done? Would you have handled it earlier? Called the HOA? Got lawyers involved from the start? Or would you have let it play out the same way and just waited for that one moment where everything finally catches up? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read more of them than you think. And yeah, if you got something out of this, maybe a lesson, maybe just a little satisfaction watching physics do its thing, go ahead and subscribe. Because sometimes, the most important lessons in life don't come from words. They come from impact.